This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
We've spoken so much about China and communism and its infiltration into the United States, but another behemoth in the world of communism, kind of the center stage and the poster child, would be Russia. And its President Vladimir Putin, like Xi Jinping, seems to be El Presidente in perpetuity. Many concerns coming, particularly from the GOP in the United States about Russia. Rebekah Koffler joins us. She's an expert on Russian doctrine and strategy. The bigger deal, she's a former Defense Intelligence Agency officer, DIA, and she's the author of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. Good morning, Rebekah.
Good morning, Tom.
When did you come to America? Were you a child?
No, I was a young lady. I came in '89, right before the collapse of the Soviet Union, which was destroyed by socialism in 1991. The same socialism that some on the left side are pursuing right now and taking our wonderful country, the United States, down that failed road.
As we look at Vladimir Putin, and there is spectacle, there is some mystery, he is without question a celebrity in his country, in his nation. Donald Trump, our president, sidled up to him and did not have a negative or adverse reaction, as we found the Democrats. And yet some GOP, the strong conservatives in the United States, opposed interaction with Putin, particularly ticked off at Crimea and you know, from Ukraine to border issues to counterintelligence. Is that part of the reasoning behind writing your book, that you want to clarify to the public the dangers in Russia because of President Putin, and clarify to the parties and the systems that may be ignorant to it what's happening over there?
Yes, exactly right, Tom. I wanted to provide a warning to the American people about the real Russian threat, not the various conspiracy theories and politicized hoaxes, but actually about Putin's master plan and an entire arsenal of tools that were developed, which include both military and non-military capability to target America. Because both sides sort of have either ignored the issue or conflated the issue with something else, and there needed to be the true story needed to be told.
Well, you talk about how Russia's already infiltrated the United States and did so really long before 2016. Just in a nutshell, Rebekah, explain that one.
Sure. Well, Russia has always viewed the United States as its chief adversary, and it even declared us as the principal security threat to Russia. They declared it in its military doctrine, beginning with 2010. But as early as right after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Russians started targeting us again with cyber. That's just one of the tools. The first cyber operation took place back 20 years ago. But then also trying to sow discord and foment really civil unrest. And that was the purpose behind the interference in 2016 election, the result of which we're still sort of facing today, because the country is torn apart. The country is so politicized that the people on the opposite side of the political spectrum don't talk to each other and don't understand each other.
When we look at Russian cyber attacks and the targets, whether it's our food supply or our elections or fuel or telecommunications across the board, You look at President Putin's response, and no different than other countries that have been hostile to the United States, he replies, I know nothing about that. I'm unaware of that. I'm not familiar with that. We have not done that. And yet, our country, and you allude to this, is woefully unprepared to fight back. And many don't even understand the potential to wipe out our complete grid if there were to be a cyber attack or electric impulse, and we've discussed this with many other government agents on this program. Do you think that the public is starting to become more aware beyond your book? And thank you for writing it, because we're seeing the dialogue in Congress. I sure do. It seems like the subject is in the news more, and that's a good thing. And maybe your book is icing on the cake.
Well, I think you're right. The topic is more in the news, and certainly people in Congress talk about it. But and the Biden administration keeps saying how they're prioritizing cyber, and they have escalated the priority all the way up to the same level as terrorist threat. But in my view, it's all talk and no action, as former President Trump used to say. Honestly, the national security apparatus, especially people in charge of cyber, have not really addressed the issue, because there's no understanding on how to approach Putin's strategy. Because Putin knows exactly what our hot buttons are, and to whether we will or will not respond to his attacks, because they've done their homework on our thinking, on American sort of psyche, so to speak, but also on how we view cyber. And so far, President Biden's response has been extremely, extremely weak. Effectively, there has been no response. And Putin has decided that he can do pretty much anything in cyber, which Russia designated as a warfighting domain, and we are not going to fight back. And we haven't. And that needs to stop. We need to start acting forcefully towards Russia.
Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. You can purchase it online. We're going to come back for one more segment with Rebekah Koffler. She is a former U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency officer. She's a Russian doctrine and strategy expert. I want to ask a couple more questions, one of which, and she can be prepped for this, is how President Putin's background as a KGB officer puts adversaries in a vulnerable position. And also, I wonder how intelligence in the United States and our divisions and departments have reacted to this. My suspicion is, and we can touch on this before we go to break, they weren't thrilled, were they, Rebekah, when you tried to publish this? Now it's published, but I assume that they weren't hurraying over the fact that you went into some of this detail?
You're absolutely correct, Tom. They tried to stop it. There was a point at which I wasn't sure whether this book will ever see the day of light. They have weaponized a legitimate process against me called the pre-publication review, and they misused it to really censor the book. And that's why the readers will see a bunch of blackouts, the deletions by the U.S. government of information that they didn't think Americans should know.
Well, now they're going to know it. In Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America, Rebekah Koffler is her name, the author. She's going to stay with us right here on The Tom Anderson Show.
This is The Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
Rebekah Koffler continues with us. Her book, Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. As a young woman, she came to the United States. After 9/11, she joined the Defense Intelligence Agency here in the U.S. and devoted her career to protecting the United States. Fast forward, last week her book is released where she details pretty much President Putin's long-range plans, his playbook, if you will. And that is, she believes, to weaken, maybe even subdue the United States. And we're talking about the nuances of someone of his stature. Rebekah, what I don't get, I kind of get it because of corruption, how he's one of the richest men on earth as a government employee in Russia. I was reading that he may have as much as $100 billion. Does he just take things as the president and say that property is now mine?
Well, what happens, the way things work in Russia, and they have always actually worked that way, is people in the government who are in power, and specifically Putin, surround themselves with a security apparatus who also penetrate business. So Putin's inner circle is basically what the Russians call siloviki, which is roughly translated as securocrats. They're former intelligence services agents. And so those same people infiltrated businesses. So they take out, the profits, and they're not accountable to law. The same thing happened during the USSR when I was growing up. And the same thing actually would happen here if we were to achieve socialism. When the people in the government have control over everything, they have the first dibs on everything. Just like what we had during the pandemic, if you remember, certain government officials were able to get the shots for and tests for their families first. That's what usually happens. So the power basically the power is used to preserve the regime and to preserve its economic stability and viability.
When we look at him as a KGB officer, my family on my mom's side is from East Germany, Leipzig, Dresden area, and I know that he was a KGB agent in East Germany. And of course, we know what happened as the wall came down and he moved up in rank and in bureaucracy. Do you think that you're giving him too much credit? Do you think that he's an intelligent man? He's someone that enjoys power. He enjoys affluence. He enjoys celebrity and stardom. And he doesn't have such an ulterior motive as much as just a human that really digs the rewards and treasure he gets in his position? Or do you think he is truly trying to undermine the United States? And the reason I ask that fairly profound question, considering what your book is titled and reads, is because I look at Trump and I look at his attitude, which was Russia really isn't our enemy. I may be propped up to say that, but I'm not as worried about Russia as I am China. And I would agree with that sentiment, that China's the more worrisome country than Russia. Why is Russia challenging us the way they are? And do you think it's as severe as some would say?
Sure. Okay. So first, regarding Putin and his personality and what actually shaped him, Putin actually truly believes that America is a threat, and he's on a mission to restore Russia as what they call the great power. He wants Russia to be on par with the United States. And because they believe that the United States is on Putin's way, on Russia's way, to achieve that dominance in Eurasia that he wants to establish, they want to remove us as an obstacle. The reason why they view us as an obstacle is because the United States has pursued a long-term policy to democratize the former Soviet republics, countries like Ukraine, Georgia, Belarus. We have adopted the Baltic states, admitted rather, in NATO. And so all of our overtures to bring democracy into these countries that Putin considers is in his sphere of influence, they are perceived as a threat. And Putin believes that because we are not going to stop, and he's not going to stop, our geopolitical sort of policies are on a collision course, and therefore war is inevitable. That's why he has to prepare for war, and he truly believes it. He's not bluffing. With regard to Russia versus China, they're both threats. They're very different threats. Russia is both a military threat. It's not an economic necessarily threat, but it's a military as well as a subversion threat. They're trying to subvert the country by infiltrating it in various ways and also foment social unrest by continuing to deploy cyber intelligence covert operations against us. China is more of a long-term economic threat.
When we look at the gross domestic product of nations, the kind of the estimating the total value of like finished goods and services produced in that within the borders, I look at the list. United States is the big gun, China's second. Then you get Japan and Germany and India, United Kingdom, France, Italy, all the way down, Brazil, Canada, Russia's 11th in something I'm looking at here from 10 months ago. Is that one of the reasons why your book has not been written sooner? I mean, you have the intelligence agency background, but also on its face, someone might just dismiss Russia and say they're not as prolific in finance and in goods and services and GDP and everything else and measures than other countries. So why worry? Is that something that concerns you? We're underestimating them?
Right. That's what I've sort of dealt with quite a bit, is because people, even in the intelligence community, do what's called mirror imaging in our intelligence parlance, basically projecting our own worldview and how we think on Russia and even on other states and adversaries. Russia has never been an economically strong country, and yet it has always been able to field a very powerful military, to the point that right now Russia is considered by the Pentagon our near-peer competitor. They call it competitor. I would disagree with that. I would call it outright adversary or opponent at the very least. Putin has been able to modernize the Russian military ever since the Georgia War in 2008. They have very strong foreign exchange reserves, and Putin has prioritized the government budget towards defense. Always has done that, and the Russian people are able to tighten the belt, so to speak, much more so than the Americans, because A, they're very much used to it. They suffered, we suffered under the USSR. We didn't have that much. And then the second reason is because Putin continuously tries to justify the large defense spending by portraying the U.S. as the adversary, so people can more easily swallow it.
Of course. And in Alaska, where our show emanates from, we look at icebreakers, natural resource development. We look at military operations. We look at egress and ingress and going around as the ice melts in the Arctic region. It's very alarming as Russia basically has the creep factor moving into international waters and lands. The book is Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. Rebekah Koffler is the author, and it's been such a joy. You can purchase this book at Regnery Publishing online and, of course, Amazon. Rebekah, sell many books, and please spread the message. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. We'll put this on the link in our YouTube video. Thanks for listening, my friends. It's the Tom Anderson Show.